Bum 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 bum. Hey everybody, come on in here. It's time for Coffee with Scott Adams. I think I'm looking pretty dapper in my baggy sweatshirt today. Well, it's a weekend, so I can wear anything I want. That's right. I am running this media empire in my pajamas with a sweatshirt on. Haven't even shaved. Beat that for a business model, will you? I don't think you can. But I know what you can do. You can enjoy the simultaneous sip with all of the goodness that your beverage plus the simultaneity can bring you. And it doesn't take much. All you need is a copper, a mug, or a glass, a snifter, stein, chalice, tankard, thermos, flask, canteen, grail, goblet, vessel of any kind. Fill it with your favorite liquid. I like coffee. And join me now for the unparalleled pleasure, the dopamine hit of the day, the thing that makes everything better. The simultaneous sip. Go. Yep. Just as good as I thought. No surprises there. So, in the news, there was a tragic shooting on some Navy base by a Saudi citizen who was there also training. Here is a picture of the perpetrator. Now, I have a suggestion. Is there no way we can do a facial recognition algorithm that can spot this guy as the guy who's likely to do a mass shooting? Compare. Here's my face, and ask yourself, I see this face. Is he likely to do a mass shooting? Here's me posing for a photo. Here's another one. Here's another one. Do any of those faces say to you, I think that guy is going to do a mass shooting? They do not. And I would be willing to bet that each and every one of you could take a photograph which an objective observer would look at your photograph and say, oh, here's a photograph of Bob. Does Bob look like a probable serial killer? No, not at all. Bob's face does not say serial killer at all. Now take a look at this guy. Does that guy look like he's happy? Does he look like maybe he's got a little anger in there? I'm completely serious. If you can't write an algorithm to pick this guy and at the pack and say, maybe we should keep an eye on that guy, it's got to be a thing, right? It's got to be a thing. Yeah, he's dead now. But this will be, well, it's just a tragedy. There's nothing else to say about that. In other news, the Rasmussen report, their daily presidential tracking poll for Friday, just put President Trump at 51% approval rating of likely U.S. voters. 51%. It's above half. How many people? If somebody says on military IDs, rarely people smile. Okay, it's not the lack of a smile that's the problem here, folks. It's not the problem that he looks unhappy. Yeah, there's something else going on here. Quite literally, if you can't build a machine that can pull that out, I just think that you run a bunch of faces through a machine, it's going to come out with this guy, it's going to come out with every other serial killer. Obviously, it's going to come up with Adam Schiff. He hasn't killed anybody yet, but I think it's only a matter of time. Anyway, the Rasmussen poll is above 50%. Everybody has talked about that forever as being a sort of a magic indicator that says, whoa, more people approve of the president than don't. So that 50% is kind of magic. What should you expect to see today? What you should expect to see today is CNN running a poll to show that that's not true. So within one day, we should see from CNN a counter poll that says, no, Rasmussen, no, no, Rasmussen, you're no accurate. You're not accurate. But Rasmussen does have a pretty good record of being accurate. I think in the last 2016 election, they were probably about the best, right? So that's interesting. But wait for the counter poll so you can have a good laugh at that. In other news, Mike Bloomberg referred to Cory Booker as well-spoken. Now, as I wrote in my incredible best-selling book, Loserthink, which should be sitting right next to me and I should be holding up right now, but it's not sitting right next to me and I have my microphone on. So imagine that you could see it here. This is me holding up my book. So do you like it? Do you like the cover? Pretty good, huh? In my book, Loserthink, I talked about Ron Santos, who is now governor. Yeah, governor. No, not governor. What is he? Ron Santos was when he was running. He got a lot of grief for calling an African American opponent articulate, I believe. So here's my tip, and I wrote about this in my book. If you were one of the people who knew that if you make this particular kind of compliment to an African American citizen in this country, it is viewed as an insult. Because if you say this individual is articulate, the thing which it immediately makes you think is, why wouldn't they be? Why the heck wouldn't they be? Yeah, DeSantis, governor of Florida. Thank you for reminding me. But when DeSantis said it, I said the same thing I'm going to say now, which is if you were to just grab a bunch of white folks and say, okay, you random group of white folks, I'm going to ask you the following question. Are you aware that it would be considered an insult to say a compliment of an African American man or woman that they are articulate? How many white people would know that that would be considered an insult? Well, I don't know the percentage, but it's not all, maybe half. I would say half at most, because it's one of those things that you really have to be paying attention to even notice. You know, in all likelihood, you've never encountered the situation. You haven't read about it. You just have never seen it. So what should we make of the fact that Mike Bloomberg called Cory Booker well-spoken? And Cory Booker, who, and this is the fun part of the story, apparently Cory Booker and Mike Bloomberg know each other really well, have campaigned together, they've endorsed each other's campaigns. Bloomberg has donated money to Cory Booker. They have a relationship that goes back a while. Do you think that Cory Booker believes that Mike Bloomberg is a racist? No. Let's be honest. Mike Bloomberg is not a racist. And I don't think that Cory Booker thinks that either, because he knows him personally, he's known him for a long time. And Bloomberg's a liberal, and it doesn't seem like really, much odds that that sort of accusation should or could stick. But here's the thing it really does. It makes Bloomberg feel a little bit off his game. In other words, if you're watching it and you say to yourself, yeah, I'll agree with you, Scott, that only half of your typical non-African American people have even heard of this well-spoken, articulate thing being an insult. But Mike Bloomberg has. Do you think there's any chance that Mike Bloomberg is not in the 50% of people who know that that's an insult? Of course he is. Now, I can't read his mind. So you have to be open to the possibility that he got to this age with that amount of public exposure, that amount of brilliance. I mean, Bloomberg's a really, really smart guy. Can we believe he got to that point without ever hearing that articulate or well-spoken were insults in this context? Well, it's hard to believe. So what it makes you think, and I want to be very careful here, there is the possibility that he never heard of it before. Because like I said, a lot of people haven't. It's not that uncommon. I think Ron DeSantis probably was in that category of people who just, it didn't register as something that he was familiar with as an insult until after it happened. But it's hard to believe that Bloomberg didn't know that. It's possible. It's possible. So I'm not going to make the statement that he did know, because it's possible he didn't. But whether he knew or it was just a senior moment when he knew it, but he wasn't on the ball enough to connect it in this context, any way you look at it, it's bad for Bloomberg. But what it isn't is racist. It's definitely not racist. So there's that. Anyway, so all of you have now heard it, right? So everybody who's listening to this Periscope knows that well-spoken, articulate, and I think a word that Biden used to describe Obama at one point was clean. Clean? Are you freaking kidding me? If you don't know that's an insult, well, you know, but at least Biden is famous for gaffes. All right, let's get to my favorite story of the day. I know this is why you're here. So it turns out that OAN, the network, OAN, has a lawsuit against Rachel Maddow because she said on the air that OAN was really literally paid Russian propaganda site. And she used the words really, comma, literally. Now, Rachel Maddow is on a news network, but is she news? Is she news? Or is she opinion? Now, here's the interesting thing. So this lawsuit is going on, and now we know what the lawyer for Rachel Maddow, what their defense is going to be. Are you ready? Here is Rachel Maddow's defense from her lawyer against the accusation that she said on the air in these words that OAN is really literally a paid Russia propaganda outlet. Now, they're not anything like that. So it's a completely false statement. Now, when you make a completely false statement on a news network and they call you on it, and it's obviously a very damaging one. I mean, this would be a bad accusation if people believed it. This would be really damaging financially to OAN. So what possible defense can you imagine that the lawyer could come up with to argue that there's no defamation here when on a news network she said that they are really literally paid Russia propaganda, and they're not? What would be the defense? Yes, they're calling it the Alex Jones defense. The defense is the things I say are not true, and I know it. In other words, the defense is Rachel Maddow is full of shit. I'm not making that up. The actual defense is, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, my client, Rachel Maddow, she did say those words. It's on video, so there's no question about that. She did say that OAN is really literally paid Russia propaganda, and it's literally really not true, even a little bit, even slightly, even any way that you want to slice it. Not even a little bit. So what did she mean? Oh, she didn't really mean that. In other words, yeah, it's the idiot defense. It's the idiot or a liar defense. Now, here's the funny part. I saved the funny part for last. Can you imagine the meetings in which this defense was first floated? So you can imagine that Rachel Maddow was probably in the room with her lawyer, and I don't know that this is true, but it's fun to imagine, that somebody from MSNBC, an executive, one of Rachel Maddow's bosses, might have been in the meeting too. And of course, if you're MSNBC, you don't want to get sprayed with the same slime. So maybe you'd like a little distance between your corporate brand and something that one of your on-air hosts said. So who was the person who floated the idea to Rachel Maddow in the first place? And did it go like this? Okay, Rachel, I've been thinking about this. I've got a great idea for a defense. I think this will work. I think this will work. All you have to do is claim that you're a fucking idiot. No, I'm saying, just hear me out. Just hear me out. If they think that you're smart and you mean what you say, it's going to cost us a lot of money. So the last thing you want to do is say that you're smart and you mean what you say. So you're going to have to go with the defense that everything you say is a bunch of bullshit, because that could work. I would also point out that there's word that Elon Musk just prevailed in his in the suit in which he was defending against the guy he called the pedo guy. I don't even know his real name. Unfortunately, I don't know the real name of the guy who brought the lawsuit, but I know him as pedo guy. Which is pretty funny. I never thought about that the only name we know of for that guy is pedo guy. But I hasten to say that there's no truth to the rumor that the guy that Elon Musk referred to in a tweet as pedo guy, there's no truth to the rumor that he has any kind of activity that would justify that name. But Elon Musk prevailed in the suit because it's just something that angry people say on Twitter. It's just something that angry people say on Twitter. So in the case of two citizens, Musk is a citizen, he's not somebody on the news, and the guy who brought the lawsuit is just a citizen, and they were having some words in public on Twitter. And so in that context, the jury or the judge, I don't know which it was, has ruled that that's just trash talk and should not be taken that seriously. Just trash talk. But what if you're a news organization? If you're a news organization and you use the words really and literally before you present your fact, can a news organization get away with it's just trash talk? I don't think so. We'll find out, but I don't think so. And can the news organization get away with everybody should know that we just make up the news? That it's just invented, it's not based on facts? Which one of those defenses makes MSNBC and Rachel Maddow look good? I think none. So let's keep watching that. If you ever have a chance to make a lawsuit against somebody, and you push them into their only defense is that they're really, really stupid and they lie, that's a good lawsuit. So congratulations on OAN for putting the boot down on that. Absolutely justified. The claim that Rachel Maddow made, that they were paid Russian propaganda, totally false. That's worthy of a lawsuit. I would agree. All right. I don't know if you noticed that I took up Joe Biden on the push-up challenge. So I did a tweet yesterday, you can find it in my Twitter feed, in which I did 25 push-ups on video as my entry into the Joe Biden push-up challenge. Now, I was surprised by the comments because I didn't realize that there are so many people in the world who apparently can't do 25 push-ups. And so I didn't think that that would be impressive, but I keep forgetting I live in America and people are not hitting the gym maybe as much as they ought to. Now, I don't know that Joe Biden couldn't beat that, because as I've said before, if you did push-ups every day of your life, even at Joe's age, he could maybe hammer around 35. I don't know. So I would actually love to see him do it. Now, politics aside, let me say this clearly. I don't think Joe Biden is the best choice for president. But my opinion of him has gone up quite a bit in the last few days. I have to say, the more I think about his confrontation with the guy in Iowa, and the fact that he challenged him to an IQ contest, a push-up contest, and may or may not have called him fat. I have to be consistent. You know, if Trump had done any of that stuff, I would be laughing and I would like him more for it. So I'm going to apply the same standard that I kind of like Joe Biden a little bit better for it. Yeah, I'll tell you some more good things about Joe Biden while I'm on a run. I think it's good to say good things about the people you don't want to be elected, because it makes you at least look like you're capable of seeing both sides. That's always a good thing. Here's something. Joe Biden being the touchiest guy you've ever heard of. He's touchy, right? To the point where there are memes about him being too touchy. But he's been in public office for like 1 billion years as the touchiest guy in the world. As far as I know, there's not a single Me Too claim against him. Am I right? Can you fact check me on that? Joe Biden has managed to go decades in the public eye, being the touchiest guy on the planet, at least in person. I mean, in public. And yet, I've not heard one Me Too complaint about him. I don't think you could find, if you just randomly pick 3 politicians from Congress, do you think you could randomly pick 3 politicians in Congress that don't have any Me Too allegations against them after 50 years in office? I mean, it's pretty impressive. The other thing that's impressive about Joe Biden, which again doesn't make him a good president, but it's impressive, is that he apparently, even the people on the other side, the Republicans, they all agree he's a nice guy. Which, think about that. There's literally nobody accusing Joe Biden of a character flaw. Think about that. Nobody is accusing Joe Biden of a character flaw. Now they're saying he's lost his step, his policies aren't right, et cetera, and those are all fair things. But that's pretty darn good. If you've gone that far in public office and even your opposition likes you and there isn't a single unsavory claim, nor is there's not even a corruption claim that has evidence. I mean, I guess Rudy Giuliani is still sniffing around in Ukraine, which is hilarious to me, by the way. And then lastly, I'd like to compliment him for being a good role model for fitness, because he's got a good weight. He apparently has been a lifetime exercise guy, and I respect that. But again, I don't think he's the right choice for president. But he's got a lot going on for him. Let's appreciate that. Yeah, I mentioned that Rudy Giuliani. Now, how funny is it that Rudy Giuliani, in the middle of all of this noise about impeachment and Ukraine phone calls and all that, in the middle of all that, apparently Rudy Giuliani goes to Ukraine to dig around for some, more dirt. Now, my first impression was the same as most of you, which is, what? Wouldn't now be exactly the worst time to do that? And I'm thinking maybe not. Because as long as he's over there digging around, what does that make you think? What is your brain irrationally and uncritically assume is true if Rudy flew over at the very worst time, because all the attention's on it, and he's still digging around over there for some dirt? What does that tell you? Well, uncritically, because there's no reason to believe this is true, your brain says there must be something there, right? Because why would Rudy take the risk, and it's a pretty big risk, to go over there now and draw all that attention, make it look like there's something going on? Why would he do that? Well, maybe he would do it because he thinks there's something there. Maybe he knows more than we do. But maybe it's just a really good way to make us think there's something there. So you can't really know, and I don't know that there's anything there. But it was an interesting, super aggressive choice to go over there now. And I suppose if he dug something up, it would be interesting, but he'll probably just end up getting his picture taken with unsavory Ukrainians and make everything worse. What are the odds that anything comes of Rudy's trip other than the fact that he got his picture taken with the wrong people? I got a feeling that's where that's going to go. But in the meantime, it makes you think, well, if he's over there, there must be something there, or at least enough that's worthy of looking into. Maybe not. Trump was funny talking about his reversal of the ban on incandescent light bulbs because he talks about the light bulbs that uh, he said about himself. He said, of course, being a vain person, that's very important to me, talking about how the light bulbs make you look. He says, gives me an orange look. I don't want an orange look. So he says, so we'll have to change those bulbs in at least a couple of rooms where I'm in the White House. Now, this quote doesn't show it, but when I saw him say this in person, he was saying, gives me an orange look, and then he said, maybe you've noticed. They left out the funniest part when he said, well, maybe you've noticed. All right. About the push-up challenge with Biden, before I leave that, my best case scenario would be for Joe Biden to take the challenge and get on video and rip off 35 push-ups on camera. Now, I don't know if he can do it, and if he can't do it, it's better if he doesn't try. But I would love that to happen. Like, that would be the most motivating thing ever to watch Joe Biden do 35 push-ups on camera, if he can. And I wouldn't doubt that he can. It seems unlikely, but I wouldn't doubt it. So there's a report that Europe is ratcheting up the pressure on Iran if Iran keeps moving toward its nuclear program in a way that looks dangerous. Now, here's what I have to say about that. I make this point in a lot of different contexts, but it's always worth repeating. The psychology of situations, whether it's your personal situation or in this case, world events, the psychology of events is that we're much more influenced by the direction of things than by where things are. If Iran woke up today and their economy was in the bad shape that it was, and it wasn't our fault, well, that's a bad example. Let me just say this a better way. Let me just say that in the context of the United States having a record economy and having a month like nobody's ever had, I think Jim Cramer has referred to it as the best numbers he's ever seen in his lifetime. So we're having the best economic growth in our lifetime, and largely in this country, most things are going in the right direction. But in Iran, things are going in exactly the wrong direction. And every day that Iran wakes up, the Ayatollah and the citizens, every day they wake up in Iran, the United States got stronger, Israel got stronger, and Iran got weaker. So you don't need to look at where Iran is or how far they need to go before it all falls apart. You can just look at the fact that the trend is sort of an unbroken trend of bad news for them and an unbroken trend of good news for us. So the difference between us is growing. That psychological situation probably leads to a revolution in Iran. Now, some of it might depend on whether the Iranian population really knows that other countries are doing well. And by the way, it's the same thing with China. China is watching our economy do well while theirs does poorly. And the president, quite rightly, with both Iran and with China, is saying, I'm in no hurry. Now, don't you think that President Trump's strategy is exactly right? If your country is getting better every day, and not just better, setting records, we don't need to hurry on trade deals. We don't need to hurry on anything about Iran. And as of today, the news is that things are going to get worse for Iran if the Europeans get serious about squeezing them as well. So it's impossible to predict where Iran goes. But one thing we can predict is that if the trend of them doing worse every day, doing worse, where we do better every day, that is not a That's not a trend that can go on forever without something breaking. And it looks like something's about to break in Saudi Arabia. Um, all right, Bjorn Lomborg, who talks about climate change from the perspective of, let's say, economics and common sense, as opposed to the science. He tweeted today that Denmark just passed a new climate law. So, and everybody's pretty happy about that in Denmark. Yay, new climate law, look at us battling climate change in Denmark. But as Bjorn Lomborg points out, that it might cost, according to his estimates, I guess, 1 to 6% of the GDP in that country, or greater than $120 billion. So they're going to do some new stuff with climate that's going to put a hit on their GDP of 120 billion or more. And there are no estimates of benefits, but I guess Bjorn had some estimates. And he thinks that if they do everything they plan to do in Denmark, it will cut the temperature in 2100. 2100, that's a long time from now, by a 10,000th of a degree Celsius. A 10,000th of a degree Celsius. And they're going to punch their economy in the face to get it. Now, at what point do we just say, this is a China problem? Can we just say that climate change and China are really just the same problem? Now, you got to throw India in there, but I think India is probably going to work with us and maybe be a little more serious about the world than China, maybe. So it feels like just sort of a China problem right now. You know, one more Holocaust coming out of China. Why in the world would we ever do business with China? It just doesn't make any sense. All right. Apparently, CNN reported that Trump is still using his personal cell phone for calls, and Trump called him out on that. He says, fake news, CNN is reporting that I am still using my personal cell phone for calls, despite repeated security warnings. And then the president said, this is totally false information and reporting, Trump said. I haven't had a personal cell phone for years, only use government-approved and issued phones. Retract. And CNN said of the reporting, we stand by our reporting. So make of that what you will. Apparently the Taliban is ready to talk again. I don't know if you can get too excited about the Taliban being ready to talk, because it's never worked before. But it's better than not. You know, I think you'd have to say it's better news that they're willing to talk than if they were not willing to talk. But you can't be too optimistic about Afghanistan. So here's a little filter on the world, if you will. So you've noticed that the anti-Trumpers and the Democrats are in their little bubble. And if you're being honest, you know that the Republicans and the pro-Trump people are in a different kind of bubble. And the two bubbles can't communicate. It's weird. And what happens is that if you're looking at the other bubble from your bubble, you can only see them through through the membrane of your bubble and then through the membrane of their bubble. And what you're getting is completely misleading. So let me ask you if this seems true to you, this characterization. When I see people on Twitter ranting about the president, my non-medical opinion is that it looks like mental illness. Do you have the same take? Now, I'm not saying it is mental illness. I'm saying that from the perspective of a non-professional who, of course, could not diagnose mental illness from a distance in a stranger, you never want to do that. But I'm saying the way it registers with me, as just a human being who operates in the world of human beings, when I see the Democrats complain about the president, my impression is that it looks like mental illness. Now, is it true? Like, is that actually, could that explain all this going on? Could it be that half of the country is mentally ill and doesn't know it? That seems unlikely, right? Now, when I say mental illness, I would include cognitive dissonance and, all that that implies. So cognitive dissonance is not a mental illness in terms of it, being listed as something that needs to be treated, but it is a condition. And having cognitive dissonance could put you in a place where you can't handle your life and your relationships and your mental sanity, I guess, as well as you should. So I'd say cognitive dissonance is not a mental illness per se, but it's a mental condition that could be a big problem in your life. Now, let me say again, I'm not saying that the Democrats who seem like they have mental problems to me have mental problems. I'm telling you that's how it looks from my bubble. Now, what does it look like from their bubble? Well, you don't have to guess because they say it. The Democrats are trying to explain their world in a way that the available information is compatible with. And the way that they've done it is they've imagined that they can see inside the minds of Trumpers and GOP and conservatives. And what they can see in there is corrupt, criminal, selfish, basically con man, criminal, illegit, abhorrent behavior. So when Democrats look at the tweets and the messages and all the things that are happening on social media, et cetera, coming from Trump supporters, what do you think their honest impression is? Without, if you take politics aside, because, we tend to play a game with politics, but what do you think in their quiet moments, their honest opinion? Again, they can't read minds, they're not medical professionals, most of them are not, in the justice business. But what do you think they see? I think that they see criminals. So you have this weird thing, and when I say criminals, I mean everything from grifters to con men to people who are cheating the system to selfish people who are capitalists who are trying to rip off all the money. So all of those things, let's just call them criminals, whether it's actually a crime involved or not. So I think those are your two filters. That the anti-Trumpers look to the Trump supporters like they have mental illness. And I mean that literally. To me, it's a Yanni Laurel thing. If you hear Yanni and I hear Laurel, I can't not hear Laurel, but I can recognize that you're hearing something else. But they look insane to me, but it seems unlikely that that could possibly be true. At least all of them. And then they're looking at the GOP and saying that they're all criminals and bad characters. And I think you would all agree that that's not an explanation of Republicans or Trump supporters. It has nothing to do with any of that stuff. So those are your two bubbles, the insane versus the corrupt. Neither of them are true, but it sure looks true, depending on which bubble you're in. All right, I think that's about all we got for today. Oh, I have been trying out, the famous saying, okay, boomer. You're seeing that a lot. If somebody in my age range, I'm at the bottom of the baby boomers, the youngest of the baby boomers. So anybody my age or older who's a boomer, you'll see people dismiss their opinions with, okay, boomer. And as Mark Schneider started doing, I don't know who came up with it first, but I've decided to amplify it. I've been trying okay, doomer with a D instead of a B. Okay, doomer. And I've used this a few times on Twitter, and it completely stops the conversation when you use it correctly. So it has to be used in the context of somebody who just said, oh, the president, his bad character will have reverberations forever that the country will never recover from. And I just say, okay, doomer. Seems to work. All right. I believe that's all I had to do, all I had to talk about today. Is there anything else I'm missing? Anything I'm missing? So some of you have, Doomer Donnie, I'm just looking at your comments. A lot of you like the OK Doomer. Counterpart to Boomer is Zoomer, someone under 30. Yeah, I like Doomer better. All right. Uh, I'm just looking at your comments. OK Doomer, said Scott Whiteley. That's funny. Oh yeah, there's a story about there's a photo of Trump and Pence eating lunch, it looks like, and Pence has tiny little salt and pepper shakers, and Trump has big ones. It's being called out that the president has special big salt shakers. Yeah, my guess is that at one point or another, maybe he said these salt shakers are too little, so he got big ones, but nobody else did. That's what we call news. If that's your biggest news, things are going pretty well, and I think they are. So, not counting a few crazy people who, by the way, is this how all Democrats look to you now? Angry like that? All right, just kidding. Just kidding. Uh, John says, Scott, what's the name of your new book again? Well, thanks for asking, John. It's called Loser Think. And you can find it everywhere books are sold. So please do. Anyway, I'll talk to you later.